Hello, family, friends, and patriots. Well, today we're going to talk about what I see as a need that we need to fulfill. We've done a needs assessment here in the community, and over the last couple of years, we have gone through the whole COVID-19 experience. And from that, we probably have learned that we want to set up a community that is more resilient, that doesn't rely upon the government to mandate what we do or to dictate what's going on in your local community. You really want to have some independence. And based on that, we sat down and decided to outline some areas that we can start working on to get that independence and develop a resilient community here in Colorado Springs and in other areas. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is building that resilient community. There's 6 fundamental areas that we need to look at when we start talking about building resiliency in a community. The first one is, of course, who are the people? The people you're addressing here in this community that I'm going to be addressing mainly all go to a local church and have common beliefs and goals, and that way, as we work with them, you know that you've got a community of like-minded, valued people that have like values and can move forward together without having to change people's thought processes right up front. So that was the first thing we looked at. We also wanted people that were system thinking. In other words, we are supported by systems here in the United States. You've got a transportation system, you've got a food system, you've got, your infrastructure that provide your cell phones and also your computers and that sort of thing. So we want people who understand systems, that are adaptable to being able to make changes, because we realize that there has to be changes going forward so that we don't get ourselves where we're relying on a government or a community that can dictate how we live and what we do. And you have to be transformable. In other words, you have to be able to adapt, but also then take on new systems as we develop them, so that as we go forward, you can change your way of thinking and actually transform into new processes and techniques and things that go on to become resilient within the community. So, and the communities that need to be sustainable. I don't usually like using that word because a sustainable community has somewhat been co-opted by things like Agenda 2021, and now it's moved into Agenda 2030, and the globalists are all, we're all helping you, you're going to be sustainable. Well, and you're not going to own anything, and you're not going to want for anything, and you're all going to be happy because we're going to dictate how you live and what you think and what you can and can't do. That's not what we want. We want sustainability to be an independent, sustainable society that can pretty much be resilient and live by its own means as much as possible, and not be doing any damage into the future. We used to talk about things, go forward and do no harm. Well, we want to do that too. If anything, we want to be regenerative in how we do things and build for a better future, not for one that we have now or one that someone would dictate to us. And last of all, we've got to look at the fact that doing all this takes courage. You've got to have courage to move forward and make changes. You find that most of the time when you propose something new and different, the hardest thing to do is to get people to get moving. Why? Because they have a hard time adapting to change, and that's where we went back to that adaptability. Change, overcoming the inertia of change. Once you get people to accept the fact there needs to be a change and be willing to work for it, then you can move forward. But that takes courage, and we need that here in this community. So we're going to look at these lines of operation. I've got them up here on the screen. You've got your personal security, food security, infrastructure, government, economy, education, and health. I've labeled these lines of operation such because I just couldn't come up with any better names. They're not necessarily carved in stone or on these pillars that you see or have seen, but they're areas that kind of are overarching, and if we need to narrow them down to get better titles for them, we will do that, because as you know, titles convey a meaning, and sometimes you can go with the title and know exactly what you're talking about. Here there were some that were questionable, and we'll probably redefine those a little bit more as we go forward. We're going to start with the first one, and the first one is personal security. We all want security. I mean, that is one of the things that, as we had COVID come through last year, everybody's like, oh, we want to have our personal safety. We want that security. We don't want to, the government is looking after you. You have to wear a mask because you want to be a good neighbor and provide security and safety for your neighborhood so you're not spreading the germs. And oh, you need to close your business because we don't want to have people coming together in one place where there's too many people where you have a possibility of catching a disease. So that's personal security. It's not what I'm talking about here. The security I'm talking about here is the fact that we want to have systems that provide you personal security with your computer system, how you communicate with your phones. Cases where you're not going to have the organizations that you're tapping into with applications or using their service providers are going to collect data on you. They're going to put your name into some database and know all about you. We don't want that. We want you to be secure in the fact that your personal identification and things that pertain to you and your family have the security and afforded them to not go out and become public without your knowledge or your consent. So that's what we're looking for. And also personal security goes down to the fact that we want to set up systems where you feel secure in your home. Because there could be times when people may want to break into your house, or you have some kind of a resource or asset that somebody needs. And so you need security in your home. And your personal security ultimately may wind up being the fact that you need to arm yourself and exercise your Second Amendment rights. We're going to look at all that as we go forward under the heading of personal security. Maslow's hierarchy of needs talks about many things, and one of them, when I was working with critical infrastructure, is the fact that you need food systems that provide you that type of food security. You have food defense. What we're looking at there is the fact that food needs to be raised in such a manner where it is not going to become a threat to you when you eat it. That means is you don't want to have Roundup on it. You don't want to have pesticides on it. You don't want to have all these chemicals that they're going to put on it. And now you don't want to have the possibility that the system that is controlling your food can actually change it and put vaccines and those types of things into your food supply without you knowing it. You eat a head of lettuce and all of a sudden now you have been vaccinated by some kind of mRNA that is going to change your DNA in your body. That's called food defense. We want to make sure our food is as clean as possible and as close to what God intended it to be as we can make it. And you want to have food safety. You want to protect your food from contamination. As you look at the glyphosate map that goes all the way down pretty much the center of America, you can overlay that almost exactly with the cancer map where there's highest amounts of cancer. So there's a direct correlation between things that are going on your foods and what happens to your body as you ingest foods into your body. So we want to have your food to be safe for you to ingest and for your body to assimilate it for energy. Also, you want to have food security. People want to make sure they have food available. They want to be able to have transportation systems that can get it to where they're at. They want to have access to food, and they want to have it in sufficient quantity and at a price they can afford. This is all something we need to look at, and under that, we need to really encourage everybody at the lowest form of production, which would be in the house, just, even if you'd wanted to start out just having some sort of a sprout system in your window, or maybe a garden tower on your back patio, or a small garden in your backyard. We're going to highly encourage everybody to grow their own garden or grow some portion of their food, and then provide ways where they can get involved in the community to also provide larger food production areas outside of town or with people who have more acreage. So we're going to have to look at that and develop that as we go forward, so we have a food system that is available for all and produces enough to keep people alive and moving forward into the future safely. I keep bringing up safety. So what are we being safe from? Well, right now we're being safe from the government. We're being safe, trying to provide safety from the globalists and the leftist thinking that believe that your safety really is in their hands, that they can dictate what you eat, where you live, where you go, put a chip in your hand, and everything that goes on, they're going to be able to monitor and regulate And that's because they are owning and running the systems that oversee these areas. We call that government. The government that God stood up in the Bible, in Romans, talks about a government that looks after its people and has the best welfare of its people in mind. That's not the government we have now. And so what we're wanting to do is to develop governments all the way down to the local level. We're talking, the local level and smallest level right now would be get involved in your HOA if you have one, or become a precinct leader, or go get involved in your district boards, your school boards, and those types of things. Become a member of your local co-op. Get involved in the local government so you have a say and can influence how they run that portion of the government and the laws and policies that they make, how those impact upon you that are acceptable to you as a conservative person who believes in the Constitution and wants to make sure that those rights are protected and are incorporated into the government that is being used to regulate your daily life. And you can only do that if you get involved. So we've got to get involved in government at all levels. We need some way to do that and someone over watching that area. The other thing that the government and systems touches on, of course, is our economy. Everybody for probably the past 5 years have been talking about, there's going to be an economic collapse. There's going to be a problem coming with the economy. Well, COVID-19 had a direct impact on the economy. People weren't going to work. You had, different businesses that were shut down because of COVID and the mandates. You had factories not being able to work at full capacity due to people being sick. Once again, because the mandate said you couldn't go to work if you had these types of symptoms or you had to take a certain amount of tests every day. Well, we want to have a stable economy. That is part of a personal security that you want. You want to have a stable economy and you want to be able to go to work and provide for your family. And that's all based upon the local economy that we need to influence and have some kind of say over. Some states now have actually enacted a way to have their own finances and making their own money. So we want to have currency that's going to be as stable as possible. We don't want it fluctuating due to the world events and what's going on with a world government. We want to control our currency and the value thereof at the local level. Part of this is we want to take things out of the bank system and put it into a local investment system. A system that will give you the largest amount of return for your investment while benefiting the most people. And we think we can do that. There's been books out there written like Slow Money that talks about how do you take money and invest it into the food production in your area and the opportunities, capitalizing on the opportunities that are there. And we think we can do that, and that's what we're going to pursue as we go forward. Today I sat down and I looked at an article talking about, well, if you're a Christian, should your kids go to public school? It's an interesting question because as we know over the many, many years that the school system went from very much a classical education to being an arm of the government that literally the last couple of years has provided indoctrination or tried to do indoctrination of our children. They dictated that they wear masks, they dictate what they can wear, they actually have tried to dictate what they think. This is not an education that we want to support. And if that means we have to start our own type of education and variety of education at the local level, then I think that's worth pursuing, at least investigating at this point. We homeschool our kids. Homeschool is a great way to ensure your children get a classical education according to the educational desires that you want them to pursue. Some of the areas that we also need to bring back is that we don't think everybody probably needs to go to college or pay lots of money and come out of an education system so in debt that they literally owe their soul to the system for years and years to come, trying to pay back what it took for them to get an education, to get a job, to provide for their family. So let's look at alternatives. Let's look at, apprenticeships. Let's look at trade schools. Let's look at on-the-job training. Other areas that would teach somebody a trade that would make them enough money in the area they're interested in to provide for their family. And we think that can be done, and it's worth pursuing. Once again, another area, another pillar that we showed you up front, education. And lastly, one of the big things that we've got to keep always in mind is our health. If you don't have your health, you've heard it say, you really don't have the ability to go forward on any of these other areas because you're just not well enough to enjoy life. So we're going to look at environmental health, health of your psychic health, mental health, physical health, and lastly, but not lastly in priority, spiritual health. So we're going to have an area that's going to consider health of the community and those things that impact on that as we go forward.